Hi, I'm David Dowdy. I own Action Coach Lake Norman, your local business training and coaching organization. And I'm thrilled to have an old friend of mine, Matthew Gibson with Gibson's Electrical, on the line today for the Business Spotlight. And Matthew, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your company and love to learn more about you today through this interview.
Sure. So, as you already said, I'm the owner of Gibson's Electrical and Lighting. We've been servicing Lake Norman area since 2007. In 2007, the company I was working for actually closed, but I had cultivated a following, and so decided to launch, and we're still getting it. And so, um, kind of grew up in the trades. Started in electrical in 1999, graduated high school in 97, got my license in '05. Uh, this is what I know. And so, Lake Norman local, grew up in Huntersville. And so I love to serve the community from which I'm from.
That's fantastic. And so now you're physically located in Statesville, but grew up in Huntersville. So you're heading north,
Correct. Yep.
avoiding some
Yep.
traffic. Good for you. Good for you. So the mix between residential, new construction service, what's that shakeup look like?
Sure. So it's interesting you asked. This year has been a big turn for us. So traditionally, since 2007, what has really been our biggest bread and butter is very high end luxury custom homes. That's just the contractor base that I was fortunate enough to get entwined with, and it's been great. But one of the things about small business is learning to evolve and adapt. And so we began doing service work with some intentionality, probably about 8 years ago.
Mhm.
But this year specifically, we really made a shift from being 80% new construction, 20% service to we're really pushing the bar to be 80% service, 20% new construction.
That's a big
So
shift.
it's a big shift. There's a lot of motivation and intentionality behind it. Some of which is the sustainability of the quick revenue of service work. Things are always broken, have to get fixed. The market doesn't really control that. But new construction, specifically high end custom homes, can have a tendency to ride the wave with the economy. And we've seen a fairly significant slowdown in new construction throughout this year. And I think that that's predominantly due to the cost of building continue to rise plus
Mhm.
interest rates. I think folks are just kind of sitting and waiting to see how things are going to shake out for this year and what's going to happen in January. So,
Yep,
um,
yep. As we
so
sit here today, we tomorrow is election day, so a
that's
lot of
right.
uncertainty and
Yeah,
pent up stress over this thing. It'd be nice to have that behind us and get some
yeah.
direction as to how we're going to move forward. So,
And the other thing about service work is that it's transferable. So we've created memberships. We do a lot of generator installations and maintenance. Um, and nobody wants to buy a company that's strictly new construction because it's again too volatile. And I don't
right.
have a successor. So I'm trying to position my company so that way when I'm ready, it is something that's marketable.
That's that's brilliant. That's what so many business owners don't really take into account until it's too late. You know, when it's time to
Right.
you're young enough to really be able to build that marketability into it. But it's a because you mentioned it, it's a different animal when you're talking about a lot of transactions in the service end of the business
Hmm.
versus the larger projects that can take days, weeks,
Hmm.
or longer actually. So
Right.
a lot of complexity in managing that schedule. So what does that transition look like for you? How's
Yeah.
that been?
So it's been interesting. So the positive about service work is that it requires little from me. The
Mhm.
negative about service work is that it requires little from me. And so um, I'm kind of refiguring out where I fit in the company, even as the owner. I mean, it's been a long time since I've been out on my tools daily because that's just not my role. But the new construction side does award me the opportunity to be able to um, custom draft all the electrical lighting plans we do, have customer interaction, meet with people, do job walks. It's a lot of smiling, glad handing, making people feel comfortable, making sure
Hmm.
that we're grasping the culture of what their home is when we wire it. Um, and so from service work, it's not the owner of the company being available to go and fix a GFI in a garage is not, it's just not relevant. And so, um, even my role is changing, and I'm kind of learning what that looks like. And so part of my strategy right now is that I'm committed to working one day in the week, one day a week in the field, all my tools with one of my crews. It's just to spend time with them, be able to share what I know, but also, kind of um, rekindle a motivation for my trade. I love my trade, but I don't get to go work in the field much, and
Right.
so nobody can sell Gibson like the Gibsons. So, if I can go out and teach my guys and rub elbows with them and coach them, then they're better off, and our company's better off. So,
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. Keeps your ear to the ground. It helps you build the relationships with your team and understand the current dynamics in the field that you may not get to see otherwise.
right.
So, well, Matthew, you've come a long way over the last 20 years or almost 20 years in doing this. So, if you had to do it all over again, and what do you think you might do differently knowing what you know now?
Sure. So, I get asked that a lot. And for the last 4 years, I've had the privilege of teaching at South Iredell High School. So I teach the electrical portion of the ag mechanics course in FFA at South Iredell. And so I have an opportunity to bend the ear of these juniors and seniors that are interested in trade work. And I tell them all the same thing. And I tell people that interview here that are interested in trade work. Um, One of my biggest shortcomings as a business owner is that I have no formal education beyond high school. So I graduated high school, went to work, grew up in construction, a true blue collar kid, blue collar business owner. But some of my defaults have been not having a business background and understanding. And so I believe that if you want to learn a trade, go work the trade, put your boots on the ground, get your hands dirty, learn it from within. But on the flip side, in the evenings, take some online courses in construction management, business management, accounting, because eventually your body and your knees are going to hurt and you're going to want to get out of the field. And, everything I know about estimating, everything I know about P&L, everything I know about business, I have learned one day at a time, one mistake at a time, one lost dollar at a time.
Mm.
And so anything you can do to get in front of that, in my opinion, if I was starting my business today and could talk to 23-year-old Matt, that's what I would tell him. So,
Uh, Good for you. I mean, it's not easy. A lot of hard work that people aren't.
yep,
Many are not willing to put in that extra effort, um,
right,
intentionality. So, you mentioned a few things that you've learned business wise, even in addition to the trade. So, what are some of the bigger learnings that you had perhaps on the business side as you've gone through the years of your business, early days, and then even where you are now?
sure. Um, I think one of the biggest things I had to learn and understand was when to say no and
Mm.
not be afraid of that. When you're a young entrepreneur, it's your ambition and goal to fill the calendar, be busy as you could possibly be, and sometimes you inadvertently say yes to projects that you never should have been a part of, and you work for people that you should have never been associated with.
Mm.
But you're young and vigorous and short-sighted, and so again, a few bumps along the way. I learned to get at 30,000 feet and look at the whole situation and have the courage and confidence to say no. And every single time, the spot was always filled with something that was successful. Um, And even some of the projects I've said no to, I've stood on the sidelines and watched the project move forward with whom did take it on, and I saw the hurt that they went through. And
Yeah.
so that for me has been, again, one of the biggest things is having that discernment, really, to be able to know when to say no and to know when to go. So,
Yeah. Uh, Sometimes you learn that the hard way. You've said yes to some things that didn't turn out so well. Um,
right.
so, so tons of misconceptions about being a business owner. Surely you're making all the money in the world and you got all the time in the world. You've already shared, Matthew, that the amount of time you put into not only hands, tools in hand, but also investing time in the evenings. But
Right.
talk a little bit about those misconceptions maybe that you had coming in
Yeah.
and how you've dealt with them.
Well, you already hit it because what I had wrote down right here on my little cheat sheet was time and money. So a lot of people think that if I start my own company, I'm gonna have all the time in the world, and I'm gonna have plenty of money. And so, um, being a business owner is the one of the three hardest things I've ever done in my life. Uh, Business ownership, being successfully married to the same woman for 26 years, and being a father of,
Congratulations.
thank
Yeah.
you, and being a father of two amazing young men that are respectful, have good careers. And that's the three hardest things. And learn how to balance that. Time is not your friend if you're an entrepreneur, if you're self employed. You wake up at 4 a.m. thinking about the day and what you got to get done. You go to sleep at midnight, 1 a.m., thinking about what you forgot the day you were in. I mean, something I've reminded my guys, and I try to remind them often that, you know, you're paid first, and Sply House is paid first. And, Matt and Tabitha Gibson, we take what's left in a lot of occasions. Now, thankfully, we're blessed and our business has grown to the point where we're not, you know, scratching at the walls and looking for loose change under the cushions. But there was a period of time that, we got what was left. And so being able to be resourceful, think outside the box, be frugal, those are things that are very important. Having all the free time you want and making all the money all the time. Those are two major misconceptions.
Isn't that interesting how all people see is the Matthew Gibson and Gibson's electrical lighting in 2024? Like, oh man, you got it made. Like it wasn't always how long did you, if you think back, how long did it take you to get to the point where you were kind of had your feet under you and you felt like you were on, granted, there's no guarantees and I understand the ups and downs.
Yeah, no. So I
Um,
remember when I first started my company, somebody told me that, if you can get to 5 years, you're going to make it. Well, I hit 5 years and I was like, I'm not
God,
sure if I'm
am
going to
I
make
am I where I'm
it.
supposed to be?
And so, honestly, it really took about 10 years of just consistency and grind and learning and adapting and um, seeking wisdom from people smarter than me, before I would say that we were at a place where I felt relaxed. I felt comfortable. I've never gotten complacent because I'm afraid to, just in a respectful way. But
Right.
I can honestly say it took 10 years to get to the point where I felt that I could just, okay, we're going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a lot longer than most people plan on. Yeah.
Right.
They're
And
thinking in the first year. It's gonna be
I
awesome.
think starting my company in a recession had a big contributing factor to how we run our business today,
Yeah.
because I learned to operate, you know, thin. And, some of those principles have been maintained throughout the entire consistency of our business. Um, and so, um, that's another thing that small business owners often do is they go out too hard, too heavy, too fast and get themselves in debt. And, be patient.
Mm.
Wait until you can afford it. And not every good thing is a great thing. And so, I mean, some of the things that we did to help kind of get past that curve is like, if I needed another van because I was growing, I went and found that $4,000 or $5,000 van that had 200,000 miles on it, but I could just buy it.
Yep.
And instead of putting myself in debt. And I didn't have the prettiest fleet of vans for a long time, but they paid for vans. And so, you know, um, yeah.
Yeah. That's good for you. Good for you. So, okay. So 10 years to get to the point where you kind of catch your breath. So, and then in the years since then, I'm
Mhm.
guessing it's taken off pretty well. You've got a nice sized crew now and feeling pretty good. What do you attribute most of that growth to? Was there any particular activities or connections, or you know, what do you point to for that growth?
Um, I am. Um, I'm really insistent on doing what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. 100% of our growth has contributed to word of mouth. We've never paid a dime for advertising in the entire time we've been in business. And so, um, I believe good business is built on cultivating good relationships. And I believe that that's my most important responsibility in the company is to build good relationships. There's contractors I work for today that I worked for when I was a green helper for the first electrician I ever worked for.
Wow.
So from 1999 to 2024, I worked for some of the same people. But and the reason they've stuck with me is because they know what they're going to get. They know the consistency. They know that my word is good, and they know that we're going to stand behind what we do. And that's what a business is built on.
Mm,
And so, I mean, you can advertise yourself to death, but you can also advertise yourself into a position where you can't satisfy the demand that you've requisitioned. So now you're the company that doesn't show up. And so, we've just tried to take it one day at a time and build slowly and consistently versus just throw out this huge cast net and try to just get it all.
absolutely. We talk about it quite a bit that the real money is made through the lifetime value of those
That's
relationships.
that's
If
right.
you've got to go buy a new customer over and over and over, it gets kind
Hmm.
of expensive.
Right.
Good
Yep.
job. So, next question I wanted to pick your brain on is you mentioned this your long marriage with Tabitha and two adult young men now as children, as kids that you've raised. So, a lot of challenges in that quote unquote work life balance. How do
Yep.
you keep your personal life and that work life in check and making sure you take care of yourself as well as those that you love?
Sure. Well, 10 years ago, I can honestly say I didn't do it well. Um,
Mm,
and I had to resolve in my brain that I was going to run my company, not my customers and not my employees. And so once I resolved to do that, then things started to get a little bit better. And so, fast forward to where I am today, thankfully I have a company that's fairly self sustaining. Um, I mean, I have the luxury of being able to go home every day by around 3 o'clock. I don't come in at Fridays at all. Um, and so, with having some good leadership um, in house, like when my wife and I go on vacation, we genuinely no longer think about work.
mm,
But it's taken 17 years of just getting it and building into the right people to get to that point. Before there was no such thing as vacation.
right.
And there was a rough spell in my life at a time where I was just, Gibson's electrical got all of me. And I had some rude awakenings at home that caused some course correction. And here we are. We got over it, we got through it, we learned, got some help, and business kept going and home life got better. So,
Nice.
and that's a big fear factor that I think small business owners struggle with is like, when the call comes in, they feel like that they have to answer it now, and it's just not true. If a
Mm.
customer waits a couple hours to get a call back, they don't care. You think they care. 7 p.m. phone rings. You think I have to answer this? It must be urgent. What I found was I would answer that call, and the guy would be like, "Oh, dude, I was going to leave you a message. I didn't expect you to answer." I just had something on my mind. I need to make sure you knew tomorrow. And so it's like, oh, okay. And so, but if I was talking to another small business owner, and I listen, this is what's really cool. In the time that I've been in business, I've had 8 people leave my company that have started their own company, and I have mentored every single one of them, and I still mentor some of them today. And they're not a threat to me. I mean, it's one man on truck, and so it's not like I'm worried that they're going to roll in and take over my company or take my business, because it's just different markets. And
Right.
so, I tell them all the same thing, that look, let your day end when it needs to end. Work will be there tomorrow. It just patiently stands by and waits. You don't have to jump in and answer every call just because it comes in. And so if you learn to balance it early, which I didn't,
Hmm.
then you're going to be more successful in your family life and in your business life, and you're not going to burn out um, and hate what you're doing. And so it's already hard enough. If you got to be intentional to build in that time to be away from the company.
Yeah. So it's like you've invested in some great people over the years. I mean, even from, the management, I guess, that you have in-house now, the guys in the
Yeah,
field. What do you seek out when you're interviewing and looking to bring somebody on? What kind of characteristics?
sure. So if they're young, inexperienced, and they want to learn the trade, I'm looking for um, kind of one of the first things I'm looking for is their commitment level, which is, lip service is easy. I want to see, are they showing up at 7:01, or are they showing up at 6:45? When they get out of the car, do they come in and interact with the crews and say, "Hey, what can I do to help?" and grab material and put on the van, or do they linger in a corner on their phone? And so there's usually some first couple week interactions that you can tell really quick if they're there because they're eager and they want to learn and they're committed,
Mhm.
versus if they want a job. You get a job at Walmart,
Right.
but learning a trade, you got to get in, you got to be an extrovert, even if you're not. You got to be able to insert yourself and ask to learn. And so the second most important thing that we're looking for is the consistency in their growth. So like every day can't be day one.
Yeah.
If I've taught you that something to do for 3 days in a row, and on the fourth day I say, "Hey, you remember what I taught you yesterday and the day before and the day before? I need you to go in that room and do it." And they can do it or do it mostly, then they're retaining and they're getting it. It's like Legos. Every block snaps into another one and you build a house. But if every day I come in and all the Legos are broken apart and laid on the floor, and I got to start over, well, you're not an employee that is either capable of learning the trade or really interested in learning the trade. And
Yeah.
so, and finding those are hard. I mean, there's tradesmen that are um, like, I have some guys that work for me. They're electricians.
Hmm.
They're naturally electricians. They're very mechanically inclined. They get it. They've learned it. They've retained it. They can process through it. When they walk into a job, the job's done in their brain. The lights are on. The people live there. Everything's nice. Well, then I have process people. And so they can replicate a process. They've learned A equals B equals C equals D, and that's what they do. But they can't walk in and start at A and C Z. And I'm talking about career people, 20 years in the
Right.
trade, they're process people, consistent, on time, work hard, knock out the process, but they're not they're not electrician. And so it's interesting to learn, and you need both.
Yep.
But
Yep.
you need both. And so it's interesting to learn what people's strong suits are, what their weak suits are, and be able to pull that out And I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. If they're not doing good here, we try them here. Maybe put them with another crew. Personalities sometimes clash. Guy flourishes with this crew
Hmm.
leader versus this crew leader. He feels like he's not being taught. So we try to weigh all that before we just cast them to the side. But
Yeah.
uh, but so that's some of the key things is just the eagerness and consistency, but also that they're retaining and building upon what they're learning day after day after day.
You might be able to correct me, but as you were talking, it seems like when you and I first met for coffee, probably 6 or 8 years ago, I remember hearing you say when you interviewed somebody, I think you set your first interviews up at like 7 a.m., 6:30 or 7 a.m. It's a test. Will they show up that early?
Yeah, yeah. So
Genius.
we did when when my office was still in my house.
Yep.
I was interviewing anybody at my dining room table. Number one, I might not want you at my house yet. I don't know. And so Cracker Barrel became my office for gosh, probably 8 years.
Yeah.
And I mean, this I was working, I was on my tools, and my so the only time I could meet them was 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. And if I set an interview for 6:30 and they're like, okay, all right, well, we're already off to a good start. But so
Then
yeah,
they got
that
to
was a
show up.
that was a pretty yeah, and there was plenty of times I ate breakfast by myself at Cracker Barrel. Um but that's a pretty strong indicator right there. If they're willing to get up, I feel like anybody that works in trade, blue collar, if you're not up, moving and doing something by 6 a.m., how are you ever going to be successful? I mean, you just it's not an 8 o'clock start world. It's just not. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
but
Well, if you want to be
our
average, if you want to be
if you
average,
want to
that's
be
fine.
average,
Yeah.
our interview process has actually evolved exponentially. And so, like now, we actually have a training wall in our shop. And so, guys that profess to have experience, they have to prove it. That's part of their interview process. They're told to bring their tools, and they're given a wiring scenario, and they have to wire it, and it has to work. We have a breaker box in the wall. They have to turn it on, and we have to see it function. So I've interviewed a lot of people that have had 20 years of experience 1 year at a time
Yep. Yep.
versus 20 years of consecutive experience, building experience. And there's a big difference. So,
Yes, there is. Man, this is fantastic. There's a lot of great words of wisdom in here. Any other last thoughts or nuggets you want to share to emerging entrepreneur, uh, future business owner, perhaps?
um, I would just say that be patient. Don't get discouraged, and don't overpace yourself. Um, the growing slow is a good thing,
Hmm.
and you may have dreams, aspirations, and financial goals for the year, and all this is fine, but slow down, learn as you go, because you can outrun your knowledge really fast in being a young entrepreneur, and it'll cost you a lot of money.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So, Matthew, what's the best way if somebody wants to reach out to you or get in touch, learn a little bit more about the company? What's the best way to do that?
Sure. So Gibson's with an S, electrical.com, um, or our main phone number, which is 704 1662. And we have a full time dispatcher. So your call's answered. We collect your information and do what we need to do.
Very good. Matthew Gibson, Gibson's Electrical Lighting. I appreciate you being on the Business Spotlight. It's been
Thank
fantastic.
you.
Really, really appreciate
Thank
it.
you for it.